Welcome to our channel, and today another story, another truth that cannot be ignored.
The sound of a car horn cut through the evening air. Blue and red lights flashed against the polished black sedan pulled over on the side of the road. Officer Marcus Johnson stepped out of his cruiser, calm but alert. He adjusted his cap, walked up to the tinted window, and tapped lightly. The glass slid down with a mechanical hum, and inside sat a man in an immaculate suit. His tie was silk. His cufflinks glistened in the setting sun. He barely turned his head, his eyes sharp and dripping with disdain. "What seems to be the problem?" the man asked, his tone smooth but arrogant, like someone used to getting his way. "You are going 75 in a 50 zone," Marcus replied evenly. "License and registration, please." The man let out a short laugh. "Do you even know who you're talking to?" Marcus didn't flinch. "Sir, license and registration." The man leaned forward, his face just inches from Marcus's. His voice dropped, dripping with venom.
"I'm a diplomat, which means your little traffic stop means nothing. Nothing! Now get out of my face." Marcus's jaw tightened, but he stayed calm. "Diplomatic or not, you're in my jurisdiction. You still broke the law." The man smirked, then snatched the paper ticket Marcus had already begun to write. With a quick, violent motion, he tore it to shreds. The pieces fluttered to the floor of his luxury car like confetti. "Here's what I think of your ticket. Trash, just like you." The words hit hard. Marcus felt his chest tighten, but not from anger. He was used to insults. Being a black cop, he had heard it all before. The slurs, the sneers, the casual disrespect. But this man had an extra layer of venom, as if his uniform and his skin color made him invisible. "You don't belong on this level. You should be carrying my bags, not daring to pull me over. Do you understand who I am? Do you understand the immunity I carry?" The arrogance was suffocating. People slowed their cars, rubbernecking the scene. A couple stood on the sidewalk nearby, whispering, watching.
Marcus kept his composure, even as his hands trembled slightly at his sides. He had been trained for this. He knew one wrong move, one flicker of temper, could be twisted into something against him. "Are you refusing to comply?" Marcus asked, his voice steady. The diplomat leaned back casually, crossed his arms, and smiled with a cruelty that came from years of unchallenged privilege. "That's exactly what I'm doing," he said. "Now, run along. Go write tickets for people who can't afford lawyers. Leave the real players alone." For a long moment, silence hung heavy. Marcus's radio crackled faintly on his shoulder, but he didn't reach for it. Instead, he took one step back, studying the man, memorizing every detail of his smug expression. Then slowly, Marcus gave a small nod. "All right," he said quietly. "You wait right here." He walked back to his cruiser, and for the first time, a flicker of confusion crossed the diplomat's face. From inside his car, the man called out mockingly, "What are you gonna do, boy? Call your boss? Call your mama?" He laughed loudly at his own joke, shaking his head in disbelief. Pathetic.
Marcus sat in his cruiser, breathing slowly. His fingers hovered over the radio, then slid past it to his phone. He scrolled, found the number he needed, and pressed call. The diplomat, watching from his rearview mirror, saw Marcus on the phone. He smirked again, confident. "Go ahead, call whoever you want. They'll bend to me too," he muttered to himself. But what he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was who Marcus was calling. On the other end of the line, a voice answered immediately, firm, professional. "Chief of Protocol, State Department. This is Director Reynolds speaking." Marcus's eyes never left the diplomat's car. His voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. "This is Officer Johnson, badge 4217. I just pulled over a vehicle registered to the diplomatic fleet. The driver identified himself as Minister Victor Renaud. He tore up a citation, refused compliance, and verbally abused an officer. The voice on the other end went deadly serious. "Did you say Renaud?" "Yes, sir." A pause. Then Reynolds spoke again, clipped and sharp. "Hold position. Do not engage further. We'll handle this immediately." Marcus hung up, folded his hands on the steering wheel, and waited. Meanwhile, Victor Renaud lounged in his seat, scrolling casually on his phone, muttering under his breath. These small-town cops, they forget the world doesn't revolve around them. One call and I could have his badge. He laughed to himself again, completely unaware that the call Marcus had just made would do far more than threaten his badge. It would shake the very immunity he bragged about. The bystanders on the sidewalk whispered louder now. One of them, a young man, pulled out his phone and started recording. The sight of Marcus sitting so calmly, the diplomat smirking so arrogantly, it was a scene that screamed of imbalance. But they didn't know the storm that was about to break. And when it did, it would flip the entire power dynamic on its head. Because Marcus Johnson wasn't just any cop, and Victor Renaud wasn't nearly as untouchable as he thought. The game had just shifted, and the diplomat's downfall had already begun. The diplomat checked his watch, clearly irritated. He leaned halfway out the window, shouting toward Marcus's cruiser. "Hey, officer! How long is this circus supposed to take? I've got a dinner with the governor tonight. You think he'll be happy to hear one of his guests was harassed by some traffic cop?" His words dripped with venom on that last phrase, like traffic cop was the lowest form of life imaginable. Marcus didn't answer. He didn't even glance his way. He just sat calmly, his hands on the wheel, eyes fixed on the car in front of him. That silence unnerved Renaud more than he realized. His smirk faltered for a second, but then he barked a laugh, trying to regain control. "Pathetic! The man's so scared he can't even look at me." From the sidewalk, the bystanders kept recording. The video would later go viral, but at this moment, it was just a few people capturing what looked like an arrogant man belittling a composed officer. Inside the cruiser, Marcus's phone buzzed. He picked it up, listening carefully. "Officer Johnson," said the voice on the line. "We've confirmed Minister Renaud's identity. He has been on our watch list for repeated incidents of misconduct. Tonight," the voice hesitated slightly, "tonight might be the moment we've been waiting for." Marcus's chest tightened, but he kept his voice steady. "Understood. Stay calm. Reinforcements are already on the way. Do not release him." Marcus hung up, set the phone down, and exhaled slowly. He knew what this meant. The immunity Renaud bragged about. It wasn't as ironclad as he thought. It only protected him if his own government stood behind him. And if the U.S. State Department had been waiting for a reason to pull that shield away, this arrogant display might just be the final straw. Minutes passed, though to Renaud it felt like hours. His irritation grew with every tick of the clock. He finally shoved his door open, stepping out of the car with an exaggerated sigh. "All right, enough of this nonsense," he snapped, tugging at his suit jacket. "I'm leaving. Arrest me if you dare." The air seemed to freeze. Even the bystanders stopped whispering, their phones raised higher. Marcus stood slowly, his tall frame steady, his face calm as stone. "Sir, get back in your vehicle." Renaud took a step closer, pointing a finger right at Marcus's chest. "You don't give me orders. Do you know how many presidents I've dined with? How many treaties I've signed? You're nothing, just another uniform. And worse than that," his voice grew sharper, crueler. "You think the badge hides what you really are, but it doesn't. I see it. You'll always be beneath me.
The insult was like acid in the air. Gasps rippled from the bystanders. Even they couldn't believe how openly racist, how vicious the man was being. Marcus didn't move, didn't react. He just repeated, calm but firm, "Sir, back in the vehicle." That composure infuriated Renaud. He expected anger. He wanted to see rage. Instead, he was met with silence that made him look like the fool. Finally, the faint sound of sirens rose in the distance. Renaud's head whipped around, eyes narrowing. "What's this?" he demanded. Marcus didn't answer.
Two unmarked black SUVs rolled onto the scene, their tinted windows reflecting the flashing lights. They stopped with precision, doors opening in sync. Men in dark suits stepped out, their expressions grim. The crowd buzzed with whispers now. Something big was happening. One of the men strode forward, flashing a badge. U.S. State Department, he announced sharply. Minister Victor Renaud? Renaud straightened his tie, arrogance rushing back like a wave. Finally, someone who knows how to address me. Yes, I am Minister Renaud. This, he jabbed a thumb toward Marcus, this officer is harassing me. I want him reprimanded immediately. He doesn't seem to understand diplomatic protocol. The agent didn't smile, didn't nod. Instead, he pulled a document from his folder, unfolded it deliberately, and held it up. Minister Renaud, he said clearly, so that everyone, including the cameras, could hear. By direct order of the State Department and your own embassy, your diplomatic immunity has been suspended, effective immediately. The words cut through the night like a blade. Renaud froze. For the first time, his smug expression cracked. His eyes darted from the paper to the agent, then to Marcus, then back again.
You can't do that," he stammered. That's impossible." The agent's voice stayed cold, professional. "You've disgraced your office too many times. Tonight, you crossed a line. You are no longer protected, and you will face charges." Gasps erupted from the crowd. Phones captured every second. Marcus stood quietly by his cruiser, his face unreadable, but inside, he felt a wave of quiet vindication. Renaud's voice cracked as he tried to regain control. This is absurd. Do you know who I am?" "Yes," the agent said flatly. "We know exactly who you are. That's why this is happening." Renaud turned wildly, looking for an ally, someone to back him up. But the bystanders only stared, their eyes wide, their phones recording. Even the ones who might have pitied him earlier now looked disgusted. And then, almost poetically, one of the pieces of the torn ticket fluttered up in the wind, landing right at his polished shoes. The very ticket he had mocked, shredded, and dismissed, now lying at his feet like a symbol of his arrogance, turned to ash. Marcus didn't move toward him, didn't gloat. He just stood silently, his presence strong, unshaken. It was the diplomat who looked small now. Stripped of his immunity, stripped of his power, stripped of the arrogance that had once shielded him like armor. And this was only the beginning of his humiliation.
The diplomat's face drained of color. His lips trembled as he tried to piece together a defense. This is a mistake," he muttered. His voice had lost its sharpness, the arrogance replaced with panic. "I'll call my embassy. They'll fix this." The agent folded the document neatly back into his folder. "Your embassy signed off on this themselves. They're done covering for you." The words hit harder than any handcuffs could. Renaud's shoulders slumped, the air leaving his chest in a shudder.
He looked around wildly, searching the faces of the bystanders, desperate for someone, anyone, to nod in agreement, to give him a shred of dignity. But all he saw were cold eyes, shaking heads, and phones raised higher to capture every second of his disgrace. One bystander, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes, shouted, "'Bout time someone like you got what's coming." The crowd erupted in murmurs of agreement. Renaud snapped his head toward Marcus, his tone suddenly pleading instead of commanding.
"Officer, listen, we don't need to make this ugly. Just let me go. Forget about the ticket, forget what I said. You and me, we never saw each other tonight, all right?" Marcus finally stepped forward, his boots heavy on the pavement. He stopped just a few feet away, his tall frame casting a shadow over the once arrogant diplomat. "You called me trash. You said I should carry your bags. You thought that little piece of paper," he gestured to the fluttering ticket scrap at Renaud's feet, "was worthless. But tonight, that ticket was worth your career." Renaud's lips parted, but no words came out. The silence stretched, suffocating. The agent spoke again, cutting through the tension. "Minister Renaud, you are now subject to U.S. law. Officers will be escorting you for questioning." As handcuffs clicked around his wrists, Renaud's face twisted with disbelief. He tried to yank free, sputtering, You can't handcuff a diplomat." But the agent simply replied, "You're not a diplomat anymore." The crowd gasped, then broke into scattered applause. Someone even laughed, a sharp sound that cut through Renaud's protests. The young man who had been filming since the start shouted, "That's going viral tonight." His phone caught Renaud's face in crystal clarity, red, sweating, eyes wide with panic.
Marcus didn't smile, didn't gloat. He simply turned, walked back to his cruiser, and stood silently, arms folded, watching justice play out. He didn't need to say a word. The sight of the once mighty diplomat being led away in cuffs said everything. But Renaud wasn't done scrambling. As the agents pulled him toward the SUV, he twisted his head back toward Marcus. "You think you've won?" he shouted, desperation breaking through. "You're nothing, a nobody. I'll be back. You'll see. His words were cut short when the SUV door slammed shut behind him. The sound echoed like a final verdict. Silence hung for a beat. Then the crowd erupted into cheers. "Finally, justice!" someone yelled. "That officer deserves a medal," another voice added. Marcus dipped his head slightly, acknowledging their support, but he remained humble. His job was never about applause. It was about doing what was right, even when no one was watching. One of the agents approached Marcus quietly. "You handled that perfectly. We've been waiting for him to slip this badly. You gave us exactly what we needed." Marcus just nodded. "I did my job." But inside, he felt something deeper. Not pride exactly, not triumph. It was relief. Relief that for once the scales of justice had tipped the right way. That arrogance, racism, and unchecked privilege had finally been stopped. Not with rage, not with violence, but with patience and integrity. The bystanders slowly drifted off, still buzzing with excitement. A few came up to shake Marcus's hand. "You kept your cool," said one man. "I don't know how you didn't lose it on him." Marcus gave a faint smile. "Because if I had, he would have won." That answer spread among the crowd, whispered like wisdom, and it stuck. Later that night, the video hit social media. Within hours, it had millions of views. People everywhere watched the arrogant diplomat sneer, insult, and mock, only to see him led away in handcuffs after losing the very shield he had hidden behind. Comments flooded in. "This is justice. Respect to that officer, calm under pressure. Proof that karma is real." By morning, Victor Renaud's name was plastered across headlines worldwide. His government released a statement condemning his behavior, confirming his removal from office. He was finished. And Marcus Johnson, he returned to work the next day as if nothing had happened. But people treated him differently now. Colleagues patted his back. Strangers thanked him on the street. He didn't crave the attention, but he accepted it with quiet dignity. Because deep down, Marcus knew this wasn't just about him. It was about every person who had ever been underestimated, disrespected, or belittled because of who they were. It was proof that arrogance can crumble, that power can fall, that justice can prevail, even against the untouchable. And sometimes, all it takes is one calm voice, one steady hand, and one torn ticket to change everything. So if you've ever been talked down to, ever been told you're less than someone else, remember this story. Remember Marcus Johnson. Remember that arrogance doesn't last forever, because sooner or later, the truth always wins. And if you believe justice like this should be seen by more people, hit that like button, subscribe for more stories like this, and share this video with someone who needs a little reminder. No matter how untouchable someone seems, their fall can come in an instant.
By sunrise, the story had become impossible to contain. News anchors replayed the footage on repeat. The smirk, the insult, the shredded ticket, and finally, the handcuffs. Headlines blazed across screens worldwide. Arrogant diplomat's immunity revoked on the spot. Black officer stays calm, while racist diplomat explodes. Viral video ends minister's career overnight. Victor Renaud, once a man who strutted through marble hallways, shaking hands with presidents and prime ministers, was suddenly a symbol of disgrace. His own government, desperate to save face, issued a public statement. Minister Renaud's behavior was unacceptable, unbecoming of his office, and does not reflect our nation's values. His position has been terminated, effective immediately. Just like that, the shield he had bragged about for years vanished. His immunity revoked. His career obliterated. His legacy reduced to a viral scandal that would follow him forever.
The internet didn't hold back. Memes exploded within hours. One showed a shredded parking ticket taped back together with the caption, "Worth more than his immunity." Another showed Marcus standing tall beside his cruiser with bold words across the image, "Calm is power." And then came the deeper conversations. Social media lit up with people talking about respect, about racism, about how often power shields the arrogant. Marcus's name became a rallying cry for integrity. Meanwhile, Marcus himself sat at his kitchen table, sipping coffee. His phone buzzed endlessly with messages. Old friends, family, even strangers sending thanks and admiration. His mother called just after dawn, her voice trembling with pride. "Baby, I saw you on the news. I saw how you stood there, calm, strong. You made us proud. You made your daddy proud, too." Marcus swallowed hard, his throat tight. "Thanks, Mama. I was just doing my job." But she wouldn't let it go so easily. "No," she said firmly. "You weren't just doing your job. You showed the world that dignity is stronger than hate. That's bigger than any badge." Her words sank deep.
At the station, the reaction was overwhelming. Officers shook his hand, clapped his back. Even the chief pulled him into the office. "You kept your composure when most people would have lost it," the chief said. "That restraint, that patience, that's leadership. That's what this badge is supposed to stand for." And then came the recognition from the public. Letters arrived, emails flooded in. One message stood out among the rest. "My son saw the video. He's 13, and he's been struggling with people putting him down because of his skin color. He watched you stand there,
calm and unshaken, and he told me if he can hold his head up, so can I. Thank you for giving him that strength." Marcus read the message twice, then 3 times, his eyes stinging. That, he realized, was the real victory. Not the viral fame, not the news coverage, but the quiet ways his composure had given others hope. Meanwhile, Victor Renault spiraled. Overnight, his lavish lifestyle crumbled. Invitations vanished. His government refused his calls. His name became synonymous with arrogance and downfall. Even his allies, the ones who once laughed at his jokes and clinked glasses at banquets, turned their backs. Journalists dug up his history. Waiters he had berated, drivers he had underpaid, staff he had humiliated. Suddenly, people came forward with story after story of his cruelty. For years, he had hidden behind immunity. Now, stripped of it, he was naked before the world.
And the same internet he had once mocked for being beneath him made sure he never forgot it. But Marcus didn't waste time gloating. He didn't need to. The fall of arrogance was its own punishment. One evening, a local community center invited Marcus to speak. He hesitated at first. He wasn't used to standing in front of crowds, but he agreed. That night, he stood before a room full of teenagers, their eyes wide with anticipation. "Some of you have already faced people like him," Marcus began, his voice steady. "People who think your worth is less because of where you come from, what you look like, or the uniform you wear." The room went quiet. Every word landed heavy. "I'm not going to lie to you. It hurts. It burns. But here's what I learned out there that night. Their arrogance doesn't define you. Their insults don't control you. What matters is how you respond. Anger can burn you up, but calm?" He paused, letting the silence stretch. Calm is power. Calm is what turned his insult into his downfall. The teens sat frozen, hanging on every word. One boy in the back whispered, "That's real."
Marcus left the stage that night with no applause needed. The spark he saw in their eyes was enough. And as the world moved on, the video kept living, shared again and again whenever people needed a reminder that arrogance isn't invincible. Marcus Johnson became a symbol not because he shouted the loudest, but because he refused to let someone else's hate shake his dignity. The story would be retold in classrooms, in dinner table conversations, in whispered encouragements between friends. A simple traffic stop turned into something far bigger, a lesson etched into the culture. That power can collapse in an instant. That respect cannot be demanded, it must be earned. And that calm, steady dignity can turn the proudest tower of arrogance into rubble. So if you're watching this, remember the lesson of that night. Remember Marcus Johnson, the officer who stood tall in silence while arrogance shouted itself into ruin. And never forget, no matter how powerful someone seems, no matter how untouchable they claim to be, karma has no immunity.
If this story moved you, don't just keep it to yourself. Hit like, hit subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to know that justice still finds its way. And if you've lived through something similar, if you've ever faced arrogance, disrespect, or prejudice, drop your story in the comments below. Because your voice matters, and your story might be the one that changes everything.